everyone, Fred Jones here, and welcome to another episode of Afterschool Guru Presents. I am so excited to bring you the team of Julia Gabor and Jeffrey Jordan from Kid Grit. Kid Grit is an amazing organization whose mission is to help schools and organizations create a holistic approach to developing the next generation of mindful thinkers. And best of all, they do this through the lens of social and emotional learning, youth development, and character education. In this episode, Julia and Jeffrey address the topic of social and emotional learning during the COVID crisis, and they will share some amazing resources with you. We're big fans of Kid Grit here at Afterschool Guru, and I am very happy they are here because I was looking forward to this conversation. You can find links to Kid Grit and their free resource guide in the video description. We also ask that you make sure to hit the like button to let us know you enjoyed the episode, and please leave us a message in the chat below. We promise to respond. So, thanks for watching, and let's get started. Welcome to episode 5, of Afterschool Guru Presents. Yes. I'm so excited to have so many folks who are showing up here today, but of course, I know why you're showing up, because I put up in the waves that Kid Grit was going to be here, and everybody's like, oh, we have to be there. Kid Grit's going to be there today. So, thank you so much for showing up today. We are so excited to get started. Now, what this is the California Afterschool Network put out a call for support for folks in the expanded learning field across the country, not only in California, but across the country. How do we help disseminate information and resources that be helpful during this time of crisis that we're all in? Also the time of opportunity is what I like to call it as well. So in that framework, I figured, what could I do? Well, what I could do is kind of be self-serving and talk to people who I really respect and love in the field, bring them onto a venue, and let's have a conversation about the wonderful work that they're doing and let you guys know about them, and also help them to give you some information that will be helpful and meaningful and impactful in your own programs wherever you are, all right? So that's why we are here. We have a co-host today whose name is Beth. She's not here yet. When she gets in, I will definitely make a point to introduce her. And as you can all see from the faces on the screen, you can see that we have our guests, Jeffrey and Jeffrey and Julia are here as well. And I'm going to give them a nice long introduction as they deserve. All right. So Julia was born and raised in New York City, and she is a national speaker and an award-winning educator who at the young age, I love this, the young age of 40 years old, obtained her master's in educational leadership and change from the Antioch University, all right? She is the mindful founder of Kid Grit, a company that focuses on social and emotional learning, mindfulness, and youth development. She's trained thousands of educators in schools and expanded learning programs for 17 plus years. Her passion is supporting and helping schools and expanded learning communities with organizational culture and support young people so that they see themselves as possible, powerful, creative contributors to society. I love that piece, powerful contributors to society. Give a big Afterschool Guru pause for Miss Julia. All right. Say hey, Julia, just for a second, then I'm gonna give Jeffrey his introduction. All right, so now we cannot go any further without talking about Jeffrey. Now, Jeffrey is a national speaker and a passionate social entrepreneur. His work is centered on holistic youth development, mentoring, and kinetic life coaching. Jeffrey serves as the Associate Director of Athletics at NCU, formerly served as the CEO of Sportica Sports, and he also served on the executive board of the Mentor in 2017 and 2018. The Mentor is a nonprofit that provides social and emotional programs to middle school boys. Yes, middle school boys in Los Angeles, the group that nobody wants to touch. That's where Jeffrey digs in deep, right? All right, his mission is dedicated to a mind, body, spirit approach to personal empowerment and life balance for adults, families, and youth. Big round of applause for Jeffrey Jordan. Very good. So, Julia, Jeffrey, how you guys doing? And you can unmute yourself, Julia. I think you're muted.
I got you.
How you guys doing?
Yeah, we're good. We're rolling.
Yeah, I know you're rolling. I know you just told me, Fred, we just got off a call with this organization. I think it was Afterschool All-Stars. You guys were doing a lot of work with them. Just so you'll know, how I met Julia. Let me just give a really quick story. When I met Julia, I think it was at the Boost conference when we really officially met. One night I was going out for drinks, because we drink at Boost. Believe it or not, there's work that gets done, but sometimes folks go out and have drinks and have some cocktails maybe or whatever. We'll leave that to another story. But we were all out one night, and I sat down next to this woman, and she was sitting next to me at the Mexican restaurant, and everyone else was getting up from the table to leave, and she said, I'll just sit here and hang out with you because I got there late. That's what a person her spirit was. She could have gotten up and left with everybody else. She didn't even know me, but she sat there. We had a wonderful conversation. I'm sitting there going, who is this lady, right? We ended up becoming friends. We ended up going out and grabbing some lunch. We see each other now at conferences and trainings all over the state. And this was really one of the first groups that I wanted to pull in because I wanted to know more about the story. And I wanted you guys to hear the story of Kid Grit. So Julia, why don't we start there, all right? What is Kid Grit and how did this organization come about?
So Kid Grit is a professional development and human development PD company that also offers curriculum for educators in and out of school time. We do student workshops. We're focused on holistic social emotional learning, which is a combination of both Jeffrey's and I work. We say it's the best of both of us. We took our careers and our spirits and we put them together. And so the story is that we grew up next to each other in New York City, born and raised in the lower part of Manhattan, both coming from similarly challenged adolescent and youth backgrounds. Both of us coming from single parent homes, both of us having a parent with substance abuse in our lives, and really left to fend for ourselves as young people. And, you know, by some certain interventions, we were both lucky to escape what could have been a very dangerous and painful part of our history. And we didn't really know each other, but we have a lot of friends who knew each other. So we kind of knew each other, like in the neighborhood. When you know about somebody, you knew about each other.
Right.
And then life happened and we went on our ways in different careers. He's in New Jersey now. I moved out to California. And I got into youth development, actually working at the Afterschool All-Stars in 2003. And in the first, one of the first 4 LA schools when they opened up the chapter in Los Angeles, I got the youth development bug. And then through some of the work I did in character education and leadership, just because of natural ability and my passion for really wanting to help youth see themselves as powerful, contributing young people. We got some notice from a program. If anybody's been in the field for 20 years, there was a program called Start Something from Target and the Tiger Woods Foundation, which was a character education curriculum that I took by the horns at the Afterschool All-Stars, and I started doing service learning and team building projects with kids from South Los Angeles. And then the Tiger Woods Foundation found me as they were growing their location down in Orange County. They needed a national facilitator of that program for teachers at conferences and after school folks. And they hired me. I was 36 years old, was my first full-time job that I got. I got health insurance and I had a 401k. I mean, I was behind, like I was way behind.
Well, and Julia, wait, because I want to unpack that for a quick second, though, because I think I don't want folks to sit here. Well, what was she doing for the first 30 years of her life? What was happening before that? Because your story before that is as interesting as your story now. And I know you don't want to go too deep into details, but I think it's important for after school folks. I love to share the stories of your background because I know Jeffrey has a wonderful background also, because it shows how we all come to this thing from different spaces, right? So what were you doing right before you started all this?
Well, my mother is an acting teacher and an international director of plays. She's a theater person. And my father's a freelance writer. So I grew up in the arts in New York. And I followed my mother's footsteps. I went to school in college, I got a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Performance and Technical Theater and a minor in dance. And I came back to New York in my 20s and I worked on the stage in off-Broadway productions. And I was an actor and I was a hustler, like always a hustler, right? Yeah. Like, I had a million jobs and, and when I was about 29, somebody said, you should go to Los Angeles and become a famous movie star. You're so good. And I thought, okay, I'm gonna go to Los Angeles then. I'm gonna try it out there. And so I packed up my stuff by myself and I found a place to live in Venice and I started my acting career. Yeah. In Los Angeles. Right? I mean, it was awful. It's everything that you read about or see on like the Hallmark Channel about like a young girl moving and giving up everything. I was picking up dog poop dog stuff for a living. I delivered flowers. I was waiting tables. I was a shot girl at a bar. I was hustling, and I was 30, 31, 32. I did it for 2 years, Fred, and it was awful.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you why it was awful. Besides that, I didn't have health insurance. I moved 4 times in the first 2 years. It was awful because agents would look at my resume and they would say, "Oh, wow, you have so much theater experience, but I don't see a lot of TV or film. Who are you like? Who are you like?" And I was like, "Who am I like?
Right.
I'm not like anybody. Like, what do you mean, who am I like?" Right? Like, I would never wanted to be like anybody. And that's what an artist is. You want to be seen, right? You want to be heard. You want to be creative. And I mean, that to me is the perfect segue into that's what we want to do with youth, right? So It was a very easy transition when I decided to give up the craft, which was painful at the time, to go into and start working in after school. I was volunteering at first. I wasn't even getting paid, but I wanted them to be seen and heard, and I wanted to use theater, and I wanted to use stage combat, and we made movies, like junkie movies, and they wrote it. I showed them how to do script writing, but that's the stuff, that's after school, right? Like, you go in and no one tells you all the time like what to do, but you just start using your brain. And I was a creative person who took what I had from one career and I moved it into another career.
Oh, I love that. And that's the point, right? Because it's that taking what you have and making the best of it and then pouring that into your work. So, okay, so let's just switch gears, because Jeffrey, I knew a little bit about Julia's background, but I didn't have an opportunity to get to meet you fully, to really hear your background and what led you. Now, I know you guys knew each other, back in the day, but talk to us a little bit about your journey leading up to this and how you came in to the program.
Sure. Well, thank you for allowing us to get together like this. This is wonderful. As Julia said, I was actually born in the Midwest in Indiana, and I was my mother was a bit of a wild child, as an understatement, and she took a vacation to New York City, and she never came back. She just called my grandparents and said, "Put the boy on a plane," and I was airdropped in New York City in 1973 at the age of 6. And it was a short 2 years later before I realized why I was there, and that was to raise my mother. She was addicted to drugs and alcohol, and I learned how to be a survivor. And I did everything, and I was very observant to my surroundings, and really took all my cues from street characters. And thank God, thank the universe, or whoever you want to pray to, that I took the best of those lessons and didn't follow up. I learned a talent. I played basketball growing up and was able to get out of public schools and start playing in private schools, and then it ended up taking me to an NCAA career. And it was beautiful that I was able to take that journey. But like Julia, I was a hustler and hit the internet market at the right time, early 2000s. And it was like the wild, wild west. Internet, like no regulation. It was beautiful, and created a business that really created really good, high quality nutritional supplements. And we had several labs across the country, very high quality product. But we knew how to work the internet, and made a tremendous amount of money, about $53 million over 7 years. I was living a certain lifestyle. I was able to fund one of my dreams 100%. And I started a nonprofit, and I poured a lot of my own personal money into the nonprofit, saying that I wanted to put my money where my mouth was, right? So I wanted to get those results, created a nonprofit, partnered with the Board of Education in New Jersey, and created what we believe still is the first ever life skills dedicated after school program. Now, back in the early 2000s, that was what we called it, right? Life skills. Right. We didn't hear the word social emotional learning or mindfulness or things like that. So it was a beautiful time. It just wasn't the business wasn't scalable and therefore sustainable. And I was looking away to create a life that was of all service. And I couldn't find out how to serve two masters, which is essentially being an entrepreneur and then having my nonprofit and working directly with kids and all this stuff. And one day I asked for help. I asked my higher power to help me figure it out. And don't anybody, allow you to tell you that the universe doesn't have a sense of humor, because about 60 to 90 days after that request, I lost everything. I was stripped 100% of my business. I lost my funding, which I eventually got funding in my 4th year from the federal government, Division of Children and Family Services, and the United Way. And I lost everything. So it was a way of me getting aligned. And when I was on the outside of that, I reached out to Julia. I hadn't spoken to her in 30 years. And I was like, hey, do you have any ideas? And we kind of started to talk. And that conversation just led to a connection on Facebook, on social media. And I had to reinvent myself because I lost everything, except the health of my family, which is a blessing. You know, I'm grateful for that. But I was faced on having to reinvent myself and heal myself. So I went the holistic route, went back to school, got a degree in holistic health and wellness. I parlayed my mentoring background into some life skills coaching, combined the health and wellness aspect with the life coaching, and charted out and built another business. And that led to some beautiful work. And then my reconnecting with Julia years later, where we helped each other. And in that help, we were going back and forth. And I was like, look, I know you're not happy, but I really envy that you're still working with kids. And by this point, I was actually coaching her. We were in like our 6th session, or 2 months or so. And she's like, why don't you make this program into, for kids? And I was like, well, since I lost all my staff and everything, I'm not really good with curriculum. I have the vision, but I'm not good with that. And she was like, hello. So we had a baby together. What we did is we took the best of her education experience and the best of my holistic wellness. And as she says, the Zoom screen, or Skype at that time, started to, vibrate. Yeah. And we created this beautiful product. I flew out to LA like 3 weeks later. We spent about 14 days together, and you can see in her apartment still there's little sticky pads on the wall. Those are iterations of our original notes from 2016. That's no joke. That's right there. And we built this approach, and it's so wonderful that today it's so important, because we spend a lot of time with educators on their own wellness, because we truly believe that if we can focus on the educator, make them understand that self-care is not selfish, that when it comes time to facilitate the curriculum down to the youth, there's no disconnect. Yeah. They have a clear understanding. They're working on their own wellness. They're creating accountability teams, and they understand what they're asking of the youth that we serve. So wow. I appreciate the time to tell that story.
Oh, are you kidding, man? We appreciate it. Listen, I think it's so important that the youth that are coming up in this field, the young people, the older people, whoever is coming up in this field, who start at 40, who start at 50, it doesn't matter. A lot of folks don't understand that after school folks come from all over the place. A lot of them don't come straight through the traditional. We start off in college as an educator, and we come from a lot of different, but the message and the mission is the same, right? Mm-hmm. And I think what's interesting is the way you took your two situations where both of you were at the bottom, and instead of, living in that, you said, you know what, let's do something different, let's pivot, and let's see what happens. And then the universe brought you together. Yeah. I think that's the way synergy works, man, when we get on the same, Yeah,
speaking of pivoting, I guess that's where this conversation is going to go, because with this pandemic, we really pivoted, and I give Julia all the credit in the world for having the forethought to create something of such tremendous value and give it away for free, to educators, and it's all consistent with our approach and our modules of how we approach the mind-body connection and digital consciousness. So
and let's talk about that now, because I'm glad you did that pivot as an expert would. So this is the point where let's really talk about where we are right now, right? Because the reality is that a lot of folks are out there now trying to figure out how to live in this space of COVID, how to live in the space of heightened anxiety, how to live in the space of not knowing. There's so much uncertainty about what's going to happen tomorrow, and yet we still have to serve our youth. We still have to serve ourselves, right? So I know that you were one of the first organizations I saw who immediately started thinking about how do we support the field now and putting out a lot of content. So talk to me about that journey and what led to this amazing pandemic crisis guide that you guys have created.
I mean, it's like, we were in Savannah, Georgia at a National Youth at Risk conference in the first week of March. And we had just done some sessions and we were flying high. We were going to head it to NAA the next week. So I chose not to fly back to California, and I chose to fly to New York, and come back and stay there with my folks, my father, for a couple days. And then Jeffrey and I were gonna drive down to DC and have NAA. And COVID was just opening up, right? It was just, we're hearing things on the news, and we're hearing like, it was like, what's happening? Like, what is this COVID thing? And that week was the transitional week where people started to close cities down. They started doing restrictions. And I called Jeffrey. He was in Jersey. I was in the city. And I said, hey, we need to make something for educators, because these kids are going to have a lot of questions about what's going on. And we do that. We help kids feel safe. Like, that's what it comes down to. So educators are going to be like, I don't know what to do. And so I said, let's create in our foundational approach, right? And if we haven't explained what that is, and if you don't know, we have 5 foundational approaches to social emotional learning and mindfulness. And that's the blend of, we use mind and mindfulness and growth mindset. The second one is body, which is it's not just body, it's body awareness, it's food exploration, it's breathing and movement, and then also food inequity, helping young people examine like where there are, food gaps across the nation. The third module or focus is called community and connection, where we focus on cultural diversity, inclusion, empathy, tolerance. The fourth one is a little bit of a differentiator, because we include digital and social media consciousness inside our SEL programs, so that kids are able to understand how to balance, because we know it's not going away. So we have to have conversations with them, just like it's about sex education or drug education. They have to make good decisions. They have to know when and where to do it. They need to be careful about making bad decisions. So we included that in our SEL program. And then the 5th foundational approach is an action project, which we also think is a differentiator in social emotional learning. If you think about mastery of learning, at the end of a learning project or STEM, you have to come out with a product. And our social emotional learning has kids really thinking critically about who they are, and they have to do a project for an external audience, but it can be in however they see themselves as a learner. So for instance, if it's about self-awareness and they want to do something, I'm very self-aware that I've misbehaved online, I want to do a positive social media campaign. That's a project. I want to do a PSA about cyberbullying. I want to do an interpretive dance about being bullied in school, and they can film it and show it to their school. So it's very creative, and we really ask young people to think about how they want to express who they are through the lens of the work that they've done in our programs.
Julia, just a quick point on that, because I really want to unpack that for a second, this idea, because I think that that's one of the things that we see in a lot of other SEL programs. There's a lot of SEL out there right now. We know that. There's a lot of stuff. But what I love about that is this focus on a project, because we don't see that as much with a lot of SEL. A lot of times we look at SEL as just a framework that we place, and it's an ongoing work that happens. But to focus part of that process on creating a project, I think is so powerful. Yeah. Why was that important to put into place? Where did that come from, the idea to do it like that?
Well, I'll tell you the truth, and I don't mean this against towards any one program. We were not happy with the way that social emotional learning programs use puppets or uses videos and ask kids, I do this all the time. If you've seen it, where you'll see like a puppet come in and he says, "Hi kids, I'm Harry the Happy Hippo, and today we're going to talk about feelings. Turn to a partner and share how you feel," right? Like, that's good for K1, right? It's great for K1, but you
see how that acting background came into play there? That was awesome.
But we were frustrated at the integrity and of how we're working with SEL as practitioners, and we really wanted kids to be self-directed. We really wanted kids to have voice, and we wanted to create something a little bit different than what was already existing. If you look at in creation and being innovators, entrepreneurs, you want to be competitive, and we didn't want to do what everybody else was already doing. And that it's okay for them, but we wanted to do something different. And we know that when kids have to present and they have a final project at the end of something, it's like the period at the end of the sentence. They're completing something, and it's not just ethereal where it's like, how do you feel today? You know, when you're sad, what do you do? This is a stronger and more connected work to mastery of learning, Fred. We want kids to be able to walk into interviews and say, this is what I know about myself. I'm a collaborator. I can build projects on my own. I'm a strong communicator. And we really believe that social emotional learning is the kind of segue to 21st century skills. And that's the goal, Fred. It's for them to build these college and career readiness skills through the SEL lens.
And that's so on mission for both of you guys, right? This connection with the SEL, but also the connection to service learning, and then the connection from Jeffrey with this idea of career readiness and pieces like that, which are all pieces our students need, especially now, right? Especially our at-risk youth, which we're serving majority of with these ACES type programs here in California, at least in 21st century programs across the country. Absolutely, amen to that, guys. I love it. Now, with the pandemic guide though, right? Because that was more, is that more of a broad overview of the organization as a whole? What makes the pandemic guide unique and different from what we've seen coming out now? Because I want to really focus on that, because I know some folks may want to know, okay, if I get this guide, what am I going to be bringing in and how will I use this to support my students?
Well, I don't know how much I've seen about, I see a lot of free like workshop worksheets going out for, you know, about how to talk to kids, or in SEL about understanding the crisis. And, you know, this again is more connected to each other. We created 5 to 10 hours, Fred. And again, these are hands-on activities for when you come back in September. And then we're also doing these trainings right now for people who get the free guide. We are providing trainings on how to use it through distance learning. It's another pivot that we've done. So we're using presentation tools online really creatively to emulate what we do in the classroom, so that they're working in groups, that they're having conversations, that it's creative learning also. And the guide is different than other because it's our approach. The first one is a mindfulness activity around sharing feelings and why it's important during a crisis to be able to express yourself. The second one is around germs, the exploration of germs. And so we have a really fun kind of debate that they have to do. Everybody has to pretend that they're a group of germs, a protozoa, a fungi. Then they are a bacteria and a virus. And they have to defend why they are the most dangerous germ.
Oh, wow.
So they have to do research in the activity, and then they come in, and when you're doing, this is the great thing, when you're doing distance learning, we can say, we tell the instructor, tell them to go find like a cap or a pair of glasses that they can put on to be like the debater. So when they come back after doing the research, they're like, I'm the germ debater, right? And then they have like these, you know, debates about why. It's so playful and creative, but it's not a science experiment, but it's a fun competitive, you know, exercise they do. But then they learn about the difference between a virus, a bacteria, a fungi, and you can bring it back to the pandemic. What is a pandemic? What is this one? Oh, is it a bacteria? No. Is it a virus? Yes. Right. And so it relieves the stress of not knowing what it is.
I've had some particular enjoyment. As Julia mentioned, we do some trainings around the COVID guide. And, you know, we model the same way we do with wellness. Is what's good for us as educators is good for the youth. So we do with the virtual trainings where we split up the adults into breakout rooms and in teams, and they actually have to have fun with it and do the debate themselves. So they come back and they perform, and then we say, if imagine how fun this is for you right now, how impactful would this be on the youth that you serve? You know, so that's actually been a pretty fun piece doing that.
Yeah, the vice president of the Afterschool All-Stars National went into his closet and came out in full-on debate garb to defend his germ in our training for it. So it was pretty playful, gives adults a chance to be fun too. But like Jeffrey said earlier, we really when we train educators to go through our SEL so that they can speak by modeling and from experience. And so it's not, again, something that you're passing on to staff, that you, administrators, mid-level, everybody's going through this together, because, you know, SEL is not like math, where it's not like 1 + 1 = 2 and that's it.
Right.
Everybody, every different demographic, every different city, everybody has a different relationship to this. And so everyone needs to have their own personal experience first before they can start to execute the activities.
I love that. I love that. And I think that that's one of the things that right now, at least I'm seeing, is this real call to go back to basics and really heal yourself and get yourself prepared before you start rolling out these programs, right? Because everything's going to look different when we roll back into the new year. And there's also a big difference, I think, between the work that's done in SEL during the day in certain ways because of the resources that are available from the 9 to 8 to 3 and the resources that are available from 3 to 6, right? So SEL for OST looks a little bit different. The core principles are the same, but sometimes the administration of it, I think, looks different. So could you speak to that, Julia?
Oh, yes. Let me tell you, the best thing about out of school time is that you don't have to have a program that is data driven, right? So where we're a young company, and while we were in the middle actually of launching our first university for evidence study, but it got stopped because of school stopping. We were doing it right now, but we're young, so we don't have the data. We know what's happening. We know that we have 100% retention on every single customer that we have had in the first year and a half. Like, our work is really effective. So out of school time can have more freedom and creativity to choose programs that are not, you know, district driven, district evidence based. And so it's much more creative, and you can really play around with where you want to put it, how you want to do it. It shows up in sports, it shows up in check-ins, it shows up as icebreakers, it shows up in theater and art, and we help out of school time people figure out where to put it. And that's just, it's a freedom. It's freedom.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up. Jeffrey, did you want to add? I thought it looked like for a second like you wanted to add something there. Maybe I'll just.
No, I was just supporting the fact. I was reflecting actually as she talked that we were ready, you know, for our data study, and it's just one of the things that go with, you know, what's happened. But you know, we'll get back there, but we do have freedoms, as Julia mentioned, with different groups. So I was just reflecting on that.
Absolutely, and I think that in terms of the freedom, that's something that I've been saying for years. Like, instead of, and because, you know, and I'm sure you guys have seen this also, California is unique and different. And I know that if we're fortunate, we probably have some folks. So I apologize if I've spent too much time talking about California, but I think it's important in the sense of, because California has dedicated state funds for ACES dollars that they pretty much guard. And so it's allowed them to keep staff during this process. It's allowed them to look at after school for the fall and know that it will happen. In other parts of the country, I don't know what you guys are seeing, the conversation is, we need to buy computers to get ready for distance learning. Let's cut the after school program. We need to do this. Let's cut the after school program. And what that means is that this work, we need to highlight. That's why I did this webinar, because I want to highlight the work that is being done in after school, and that idea, we can do SEL in after school. We can do real project-based learning in after school. We can do a lot of stuff in after school that they're not allowed, they don't have the flexibility to do during the day. And so I love that you hit that, because I think that is so important, right? But even more important than that, so if I'm a person who's saying, okay, this is all great, this is all dandy, but I look at Julia and she is a bundle of energy. I look at Jeffrey, he has the charisma of, you know, to 200th degree. I can't sell this stuff to my staff like they do. If I get this curriculum and I roll it out to my staff, I see Billy Joe shaking her head. She's like, yeah. If I get this curriculum and I sell it to my staff, is it going to be the same thing? What do you say to those guys?
I'm going to ask Billy Joe to speak, actually, because he has had this experience with us.
Oh, perfect. Awesome. I didn't mean to put you on the spot, Billy Joe, but I saw you shaking your head. So just unmute yourself.
Actually, I felt the same way, like, okay, I can't buy this curriculum and make it work, because the curriculum is Julia and Jeffrey, and my staff were so lit up by the curriculum and by the technical support you get from both of them that we were rolling and doing good things, and then Corona hit. So it is very possible to take what they give you and take it back to your people.
Thank you. And listen, nothing like, and I'm sure if she didn't pay them for that, they did not pay her for that. I guarantee you. She didn't even know I was going to call her up there. Awesome, awesome. All right, so I want to leave this last, first off, Julia and Jeffrey, is there anything else right off the top of your heads, if you want them, everyone to walk away with one thing, what would that be before we turn it over to the Q&A?
I think for me, I want to share that, it's along the lines of social emotional learning really needs to be not just taught by frontline staff, that, mid-level psych coordinators all the way up to your EDs, everyone needs to be trained. It has to be an agenda item every week. It's a common language that people have to learn how to speak. If it isn't really threaded through an organization or a school, the chances for success are much less. If you try social emotional learning with any program and then you say, oh yeah, it didn't work, I'm going to ask you a lot of questions about how you did it. Because it doesn't just work like magic and you see school turnaround in 60 days or 90 days. It takes really 2 to 3 years for a committed ensemble, like a collaborative, to get behind it and to really thread through what's working and to do, to really understand that. So that's like my message to everyone who is, working and interested in this work. It really has to be either top down, or if you're into servant learning, you're bottom up. Everyone has to be an SEL person.
Love that. Jeffrey?
Man, my partner is wicked smart, isn't she? That's spot on. Wow. Yeah, well, I'll come to you with this angle. And, one of the things that was mentioned earlier is that we want to provide youth with the space to be heard, seen, empowered, supported. And I think the biggest thing from us is that, hey, it's time to talk about our staff needing the same thing. Right. And I think that's really, we have a lot of differentiators in our business, but it's the care that we put in to the educators and all the way from frontline staff to EDs, as she mentioned, through schools, programs, districts, the whole, line has to be embraced, as she mentioned, every aspect of it. And once it's embraced and that holistic care can seep through, then everybody's gonna, benefit from it. Not just the kids, but staff and all educators along the line. So,
thank you, Jeffrey, man. All right, so as I said, didn't I tell you this was going to be an amazing episode today? So, okay, now questions, because I know a lot of you have been sitting here going, okay, I would love to ask Julie or Jeffrey a question. So this is the time. All you have to do is just unmute yourself, and you can go ahead and ask the question. So who has the first question?
Of course, I'm going to jump in there.
And before you do that, this is Beth Pine, our co-host, who I'm about to turn it over to anyway, but go ahead, Beth.
Okay, so Julia and Jeffrey, I just got through completing a survey for our local district about behavior issues. And as I'm filling out the survey, it just, like, every single answer included some sort of emotional, social connection with the students, that, the behaviors are almost always linked to the number of ACEs with that kid. And so I'm wondering if your curriculum addresses the behavior issues that arise due to the need for social emotional learning.
Good question.
So let me try to clarify that question. Does the curriculum answer kids who are coming from high trauma? Like, is that?
Sorry, I'm sorry. So does it speak to the need for social emotional development to address the behavior issues?
I think I don't want to say yes or no for sure, because we haven't pulled data from, on an official study, but I think that the way that our lessons are designed, there's so much interaction, collaboration, and work around how do we get on with each other indirectly. And we do, we start off with social norms and really helping kids understand that it comes from them. And when we're giving young people voice to understand their own behavior, we always have to ask them in the curriculum to think critically about the decisions they're making, about their behavior when it's not going in the direction that you're hoping is happening in the class. And we always refer back, we talk about this a lot more in the training than the actual curriculum, to prepare staff for when there becomes a behavioral issue, how are we going to manage it through the lens of the work we're doing. So that happens more in the training than it does, we don't say anywhere in our curriculum, for this kind of child, this is what you're supposed to do. Because, it's just not the way that it's written. I don't know if that's helpful.
That answered my question. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Great question. Great question. Who else? Who else has a question for the team from Kid Grit? Don't be shy. Anyone?
Thanks, Billy Joe just wrote, there is so much space for kids to self-reflect. We found that they were able to label, for lack of a better word, their feelings.
Labeling their feelings. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. We have the first activity they do is called the Holistic Wellness Wheel. And it's a little bit of an informal evaluation where there's 10 sections, and embedded in the 10 sections are the CASTLE frameworks. So we have things like self-management, self-awareness, building relationship skills, and then also we put in our own stuff, mindful eating, confidence, trying to think of some of the other ones, but there's 10 sections in it, and we refer to the wheel throughout the program so that kids, they start to mark where they are on the wheel if they're feeling that they have room for improvement, or if they're feeling like I'm super confident, like I got this, or if they're like I really need to work on my confidence. And through the program, we do check-ins with them all the time so that they're really they get a vocabulary for behaviors.
Yeah, the holistic wellness wheel is essentially like a life satisfaction survey, and one of the segments is self-awareness. So as Julie mentioned, mindfulness, physical activity, movement, cultural and social diversity. It runs the gamut, but the epitome of the whole exercise is self-awareness. And when used with youth, no matter what the age group, this could be the first introduction to these terms that they've ever heard, and things that they can build on throughout. So the introduction of it, and for them to be aware of these different things and how it shows up in their life, is extremely important.
So I wanted to just jump in. Thank you so much, Jeffrey. I wanted to jump in because Billy just shared something again. She said, my staff completed this wheel in January, and then our first Zoom after school shut down, and they were amazed at the changes they had to their answers after school closed and work ended, right? So this type of surveying of staff is important, but even more so than this, I have one last question for you guys, all right? If you had to tell staff, all right, because we focus a lot on the impact of this in youth, and then Jeffrey brought up the idea of focusing on staff, right? Because we got to get ourselves right before we can start dealing with other folks' kids. Okay, let's just keep it real. So what would you tell organizations would be the first in your head, and of course, every organization is different, right? What would be the first two things in terms of I would start to think of for rolling out next year in terms of SEL? What would be the first two things that you say organizations need to start thinking of? These are the first two steps at the very least that you need to start thinking about to roll out SEL to support staff who are going to be supporting students.
It's easy for me to answer. I think it would be that leadership presents them with some opportunities to focus on themselves, right? Instead of just getting tools and resources together for the youth, and just say, hey, this is for you. Let's slow down. Let's think about all these things and how they're showing up in your life right now. Because as Julie mentioned, we start with the holistic wellness wheel. And as Julie was working with the Afterschool All-Stars today, I was on the phone serving the state of Massachusetts in the same regard with the 21st Century Grant. And they were just amazed at how this was their third session, about how the development and coming back to the wheel and looking at these things, the same way Billy Joe said, is that they'll, range your answers, or we call it a snapshot of how you feel with your satisfaction in these areas can change. It can shift. So when you spend that amount of when you invest in the staff for their own wellness and their own understanding of these concepts, and then see that there are tools and resources to support them in their day-to-day work, I think that's the best place to start. And that's the biggest thing that we've encountered is feedback. And Billy Joe can attest to that, because we spent, remember that day? It was an ice storm, but we spent a good solid 6 hours of just focusing on their staff. And it was just wonderful. Feedback was wonderful to see everybody open up. And, a day later, Julie and I were at a college football game with her staff. So it really allows those connections that you mentioned to happen. Yeah. And, I really think that look back when your leadership cares enough or sees the importance of investing in them first, it really shifts. It shifts the mindset.
Okay.
I'd just like to add, I really think that I would ask an administration to be patient. I would ask them to be compassionate. Aside from the tools and doing research on what kind of program that you want to use, I would say, this is, especially right now, in this time of, it's getting very, very hot out there across the nation, and there's a lot of stuff happening. And we're walking into territory that no one has ever been before. And it gets a little bit wonky for me when people say, we're all in this together. Because yes, and actually this came up on a call, I think it was Tiffany that talked about this last week, but while we're all going through something that we've never been through together before, nobody is having the same experience with it. And that generalization is very dangerous for adult staff to come in back to school thinking that this, not understanding that these experiences are different for each other as adults first, and then how we can parlay that information in terms of making our kids feel safe and knowledgeable about, what's happening. Because you have to spend some time healing your staff right now in this time before they walk into those classrooms with those kids, or in your after school program. And I don't care if your staff is 17 years old with their first part-time job, or they're 40 years old and maybe their husband got laid off. Like, this SEL work is about humanity. And, that's really important to us and I think that people like Billy Joe will tell you, like, that's how we work. Jeffrey didn't get his luggage and he presented in his sweatpants. We did a 6-hour full day training in sweatpants, and, this is life now, right? My house is your home too when you come into my world through Zoom. I'm not putting a fake background,
Hey.
Oh, oops, sorry, Fred.
Go ahead, baby, do you. I love you, Julia. Go.
All right.
We had no idea.
You had no idea. Listen, it could have been worse, right? At least it's not this, okay? So.
But, what I'm saying is that we have women on these calls with their toddlers pulling at them, and they're trying to get our information, and they don't want to disappear. They want to see us, and that's exciting, right? Like, Jeffrey and I are so fortunate. We're very blessed right now to have not just a program curriculum that's helping staff, but we are doing staff wellness. It's like a hot potato because we're in the business of humanity and healing and expression. So we're so blessed, and fake backgrounds are okay. We know why a lot of people have them, right?
you know I don't care. I love you. All right, so listen, man, what a powerful hour. So we're not done yet though, right? Because there you go, Jeffrey representing. Thank you. I'm not alone. All right. So listen, we still have one other thing that we want to do, because as we like to model, I don't think that you have such a wonderful conversation and just wrap it up and walk away. So what we're going to ask now, before we give all the final notes and before I allow the guys from Kid Grit, they're going to share their contact information one more time in the chat for everybody. So please make sure that you look at that. We're going to do a kind of wrap up. And Beth Pine who is from Fort Bragg School District and one of the TA fellows from the Expanded Learning School of Leadership and Facilitation here in the state, who's an amazing group of site coordinators and administrators who are out there doing amazing work in the field. She's volunteered to come on and to lead us through what we call an oral conversation to wrap this up. So I know it's 2:24 right now. It'll take us about 10 minutes to do this. So we ask if you have the time to stay on and experience this with us. But if you have to go, we appreciate you being here as well. All right. So Beth.
Okay, hi. I like the background, Troy. Love that one. What I'd like to do is very quickly share a story with you of an experience that in our school district with SEL, and then we'll take a little time to share. We'll keep it short today. So in my school district, the school under the new superintendent a couple years ago woke up to the need for SEL in the school, but didn't get a lot of buy-in from the teachers, which probably happens quite a bit. And then the counselors wanted to see it happening. And so the counselors said, oh, we'll do the after-school program, and which is great, because we had been practicing some sort of SEL for years, of course. And so, but then the curriculum came out and basically was handed to the site coordinator, which was handed off to the instructors and said, do this. And so the instructors and the students, every time the book would come out with the scheduled SEL, it was kind of like, we have to do SEL today, which is the way it happens, I'm sure, many times over. And so SEL in that particular site became kind of a dirty word. And so I kind of just wanted to share that with you, just to get you kind of thinking about SEL and SEL in your district, and just maybe take a couple of share outs from people about their experiences with SEL, or what they're doing now, and what kind of impact Julia and Jeffrey have had in maybe rethinking it, or interest in SEL from today's session. So if I could get a couple of volunteers.
I'll go ahead and go, Beth. I just wanted to clarify. So you wanted us to share out what we're doing and then get feedback? Okay. I can't hear you, but. I can't hear what you're saying, but I'll go ahead and go.
She's got the reverse. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. Share out what you're doing, or share out some experiences, or just share out some thoughts that Julia and Jeffrey have brought out for you.
Well, for me, I actually, as a site lead and more on the bottom level, have been able to notice that SEL, especially even within myself and my staff, is super important. I pledge, preach, and thank you for putting it straight, Julia, it's true. It's about humanity. It's more beyond than it's a curriculum or it's a standard, or it's more beyond humanity in the times that we are, and a reflection piece that as each as individuals and within our social setting and communities have to reflect upon. So for me, I've actually implemented that, especially with my line staff, to be able to make sure to gauge where they're at and how we can move forward as a team, and what are the best tricks and tips that I have to be able to support them. So I've gone to where we're doing exercises and researching how can I bring up just building community with them and understanding them of their struggles, or even within my own, and expressing that and building that friendship, that model of we come together. And like you said, yes, we are living through this new norm, but how is it different for me and you, and how can we support each other with that? So it's been with surveys, activities, journal writing, and just having that front-on conversation, one-on-ones, and meetings. But one of my things that came up with what Julia and Jeffrey said was that as we're bringing this to administrators, and I know that for me, that'd be a question, how do I justify and prove the bells and whistles that, yep, social emotional learning and this with our staff has to be one of the utmost priorities, I feel personally to me, coming back post-COVID temporarily timeout. How, because we don't know, hypothetically, we'd assume that we'd look like now if we go back in August, yes, we're post-COVID, but then we can have another follow-up with that. So, we're like basically in the middle living. So how do we prove, or how do we show, or how do we pitch it so that they understand the importance of this?
That's awesome.
I can take a quick shot at that. You can use any of, like, I say, like the mother framework research companies, castle.org. They have a lot of research that shows that when kids are participating on a regular basis with social emotional practices, that there are less behavioral incidents, less visits to the principal's office, that learning is, kids are more free to learn better, their grades go up. Basically, the SEL framework keeps kids feeling safe, and in this way, when kids feel safe, they can learn. If you're looking at the whole child approach, you're looking at them not just as an academic learner, but what's going on in the home, in their community. Are they eating? Are their clothes clean? There are schools that have washing machines in their, parts of their gyms right now. Like, people who are thinking about holistic child development, there's data behind how kids start to succeed. Another resource, you could look at the Ron Clark Academy and how they work with young people and giving them voice and agency and arts integration. They also do a really good job, but I have other resources too. You can contact us, I can send you, but the data will drive the conversation. That'll be helpful too.
Right, and we don't have, and one of the things, thank you so much, Julia, and thank you for the question too, Wendy. One of the things that we don't have data for, of course, is, what's it going to look like when we get back? And, we had plenty of dealing with kids with lots of ACEs before, and wow, what's it going to look like when we get back? And so just maybe, could I get one more share out of some thoughts? I know you're thinking about it. I'm thinking about it. What's it going to look like when we're getting back there? What is our social emotional learning going to need to address when we're back?
Can I go?
Yes, please.
Yeah. I think it's even now. One of my boss actually pointed out the fact that, like, we have to remember that after school programs were possibly like one of the most consistent things that students were able to do and attend. I myself, I truly believe, like, we see students more than some of the parents, and some of these students actually reached out to us like through our Google Classroom and had asked, hey, like, can we do Zoom chats, or can you guys pose some sort of question and then have all of the staff be on there, and so that way we can see you guys and talk to you guys. And it made me realize that, like, how important we are to them, just as much as difficult it is, like, on a daily basis. Some kids, we all meet some students that just annoy the heck out of us, but then we forget that, like, those kids are the ones that need us the most. And especially in these times, we don't know what kids are going through at home. We don't know what our staff are going through at home, especially because they're not on site as consistent anymore. And so I think one of the challenges I can already kind of see, like, going back is, those students that always said, hey, like, I don't want to be in the program today, or I don't want to come to school today, but they've been home for so long, and now they've transitioned to being at home for so long, and now having to transition back to being back in school. That to me is going to be the challenge of, like, how can we address that? How can we, like, find the balance for those students and those staff, And even for myself, honestly, like, I've at first it was kind of a struggle, because personally I'm a busybody. I was raised to work hard and just keep working, but now I'm just kind of used to obviously staying home, more free time to work on, my own personal stuff, and then continue working, Zoom chat with, amazing people like you guys. But like, how can we address that, and how can we find the balance? How can we help others find the balance, when we do go back?
So yeah, that's one of the things that we'll never really know how much impact that we have. I mean, we may know, we may hear, but there's a lot of them out there that we won't know. So just the last thing I want to say is just or last thing I want to do is just have everybody take an opportunity to just share out just one word that describes, how you're feeling about today and how you're feeling about social emotional learning in general after listening to Julia and Jeffrey. My word would be like curious. I'm really curious to check out the curriculum that you're offering, and and especially since I haven't seen any that are directly related to social emotional learning during the pandemic. So my word is curious, and I'm just going to go kind of around or just down the list of participants that I have here. So the next one is on the list is our host, Fred. So what is your word, Fred?
I just feel inspired.
Thanks, Fred. And the next one would be Julia.
I feel blessed. Like, I really do. In the spirit world, I feel like we did something out of love. Or it's one word. Sorry, I feel blessed.
Thanks, Julia. That's cool. No, I love hearing your thoughts too. I wish we had more time. Chandler, can you hear me, Chandler? He's still here.
So if for some reason you can't, your audio or something, you can also type it into the chat and I'll read it out for you if you prefer to do that as well. Okay, guys?
Right on. I'm going to come, we'll look for Chandler in the chat box, or I'll come back to him. Christy?
Christy has encouraged. And she says she already printed out the curriculum to share with her staff.
All right. Awesome, Christy. And then the next one is Hill.
Thankful.
And Jeffrey?
It's great that I go after that young man. I just wanted to say grateful, because a part of my personal thing right now is I miss people, because, as the 5 love languages that I am, it's like physical, like contact, and that especially is, not allowed during this time. So I miss it. And then Hill, for you, I just wanted you to check out the Kid Grit Air Force One special for you. All right. We can wrap offline about it. Go ahead. That's the second one. All right.
Where can the host get his fare? Where can the host get his fare? I just want to add in that Jill said emotionally helpful. It's okay, Jill, we'll take your 2 words. And that Tiffany says necessary. Supporting each other will have to be our first step. All right.
All right. So, Michelle?
Motivated.
Right on. Yes. Molly?
Optimistic.
I'm sorry, Molly, I didn't hear that. Would you say one more time?
Optimistic.
Oh, yes. Thank you. Patricia?
I'm going to say appreciative.
Thank you, Patricia. Sherry?
I'm going to say intrigued. I've done some work with restorative justice, and it seems like they have a lot of parallels there. So I'm interested in seeing what the curriculum portion of this is. So thank you.
Yes. Teresa?
Hopeful.
Teresa, you know what? I'm going to have to text you and figure out how you're going to expand on that one for me.
Well, I'm hopeful for trying this new material that will talk to the kids.
Right on.
Work with.
I think I've got everybody.
Did we get Wendy?
Yeah, Wendy. I missed Wendy.
I'm excited. I'm excited to be able to use this and what it can really do. And I think it's the start of something new, a great new.
This has been really an inspirational meeting. I'm thrilled that that you guys are able to come and visit with us and help us get another tool as we start envisioning where we're headed. Because I think that's one of the things that we're all the most concerned about is what are we doing now, but but also where are we going? And, feeling like we're a little bit adrift. And so I think I used that word once before, huh, Fred? So anyway, thank you for providing us some direction.
Thank you.
All right, and give a big round of applause for Beth. Yes, thank you for doing a really quick wrap up. All right, and then of course, one very big applause for Kid Grit for coming in and sharing such wonderful knowledge for us. We cannot thank you guys enough.
Yes.
So would you give them your information, contact information one more time so folks can know where to find you?
Both of us, our emails are just our first name with kid-grit.com, and it's all, it's a hyphen in between it. We have a lot of new stuff happening. Keep an eye on that website. We're going to launch we're really doing some distance PD right now, and not only showing content, but showing facilitators how to feel comfortable using platforms, and also how to be a great interactive facilitator, not just how to use technology, but how to be fun and playful and artistic using technology. So to get over the fear of it. So we're launching a whole bunch of new stuff to support education right now.
Now, can I assume that there won't be any background usage in your presentation?
I'm a little stunned by your question, but we might show them how to show kids how to do it so that they can play games and go on journeys together, for instance. Right?
Hit him with the wings, Jules.
Yeah. No, I want the shoes. That's what I really want. That's what I want. The Kid Grit shoes. All right. You can't hold up something like that and just leave it like that. All right. So listen. Number one, thank you, Julie and Jeffrey. Thank you so much for answering the call. Just like I said, there were a couple of folks who I really wanted to get on these calls, and you were definitely on the top of my list. So thank you so much for showing up and sharing your wonderful knowledge. Thank you for all of y'all who stuck around 12 minutes over an hour for one, I got you, Julia, for one more Zoom call, right? Because I know we are all sick of Zoom, and yet you guys showed up and you actually stayed here for 12, 13 more minutes. So thank you for that. And as always, I always like to end this. Jeffrey, did you want to say anything before I wrap it up?
No, I said my word. Yeah.
All right, good. So if no one else has told you guys, I always like to end this webinar like this. If no one else has told you how amazing you are, if no one has told you how beautiful you are, if no one else has told you that your work matters and that you are valued, then let me be the first person to tell you that. The work that you do is so important to the youth of this country, and the fact that we are not given more money, more love, and more prestige is just beyond me. So if no one else has told you, let me tell you, I love you, I thank you. Pat yourselves on the back, all right? Please join the Afterschool Gurus Facebook group. Come join us. There's a lot of information. That's where we all hang out. We share information and resources. And thanks again to the guests. And I look forward to seeing you next week. We will not have one because I need to hurry up and get all the YouTube videos and get caught up. And then after that, we'll be starting again on the next week. And our next guest will be Tiffany Gibson, who happens to be and listen, this one is going to be good because we're going to be talking about inequity, because it's a real issue of what we're facing. So make sure that you come back and you see us on the 21st, all right? So anything else from anybody else? If not, enjoy your week, have a wonderful time, and we look forward to seeing all you guys on the next episode, all right?
Fred.
Thank you.
Fred.
Appreciate you.
All right, see you guys later.